Welcome to another episode of Not Your Average Lives. And I'm still recording from my home office. It's a temporary thing because the drywall project is underway. So soon you will see a painted wall, fresh wall, not the bright pink anymore. So looking forward to that. Today's guest is Sarah Atkins. And Sarah is a human design expert. And I'm really excited to have this conversation with her because we talk about her backstory. Like a lot of backstories, she had a health crisis, ended up in the hospital, in the emergency room, and actually had surgery. And it was crazy. But her journey took the long way around. And she ultimately found human design, trying to learn more about herself and how she could be more fulfilled in life. And then she found this human design typing, and she's become an expert. And now she helps people with learning more about their types, charting, and coaching. And so she's really great. She's from Great Britain. She is from the UK, and I had a ball talking to her. And just FYI, we talk a lot about her background and her struggles in the beginning, and the human design stuff comes in the latter part of the interview, but it's juicy because it's the human design stuff is really fascinating, and I'm just getting into it, and I'm excited about it. I don't know what my type is yet because I don't know when I was born. So I have to figure that out because you can do it supposedly with a pendulum. So that is TBD. So enjoy the episode, and there'll be some information in the show notes on the different types and famous people who are the different types, and of course, information so you can connect with Sarah if you're interested in finding out more. All right. Welcome to another episode of Not Your Average Lives. And my guest today is Sarah Atkins. And I'm very intrigued to talk to Sarah because she is going to talk about a subject that I think will be of benefit to everyone. She's a human design expert. And so I'll let her explain what that is, but I'm kind of fascinated about it. And I'm just like getting into it. It's just kind of brand new to me. So welcome to the program, Sarah.
Thanks, Laurie, and thank you so much for having me. This is like my favorite subject in the world, so I'm happy to be here.
Oh, good. Yes, and as you can tell, she has a British accent, and she's from the Cotswolds. I don't know how to say that right, but yes. And so it's lovely. I love the British people. I've been over there a few times and can't get enough of them. And my husband loves beer. So
it's always a winner over here. That's
yes,
for sure.
a pint. Yes. So tell my audience, tell the listeners a little bit about you, and how do you want to introduce yourself, and what human design is. You can go right into that.
Yeah, sure. So I am sort of an expert in quantum human design, which is a slightly newer, kind of updated, up-leveled version of the original human design, which was created by Ra Uru Hu. So I follow, and my trainer is Karen Curry Parker, who is also American. So she is the person that is training me, or has trained me. And I came to human design about 18 months ago now, but I'm also an ICF accredited coach. And
what does ICF stand for? I should know this.
ICF is the International Coaching Federation.
Okay.
So it's a governing body, basically. It is American founded, I believe, because obviously coaching, like most of these kind of things, sort of originate in America, and then we kind of end up adopting them over here. But yeah, it's the International Coach Federation, so it's an internationally recognized body. And then, so I qualified as a coach. I've been coaching for a few years now. And
you didn't always do that. So
no,
we'll get to that maybe later. We'll talk about human design, and then you can talk about, but yeah, one of the things Sarah was saying to me before we hit record is that she, about 13 years ago, had a midlife transformation, although you were only 30 at the time. But isn't it interesting how like we hit these decades and then we start to think about where we are in life. So I don't know if that's exactly what happened to you. You said you had a little bit of a health crisis. So I don't know if you want to go into that first and then talk about human design. Okay.
So my background is actually in textile design, believe it or not, which seems like a million miles away from where I am today. And I graduated from my degree in 2001, so 20 years ago, and went into the fashion industry, which is something that I'd always kind of dreamt that that's what I believed that I was meant to do. And I worked for some really top high street retailers, really well-known global fashion brands. And I kind of reached my big goal, I suppose, before the age of 30. And I kind of found myself completely burnt out. I was miserable. They say be careful what you wish for, and that's definitely the kind of situation that I found myself in. I had got myself stuck into this cycle of overgiving, overworking, working stupidly long hours. I'd be always the first one in the office, pretty much the last one to leave at night, constantly feeling that I just wasn't doing enough. And some of it potentially was my own kind of lack of self-belief, my own like massive imposter syndrome, like I had to do all of these things to kind of get promoted and to do what I needed to do. But I felt like I was banging my head against a brick wall. I never kind of made any what I felt was meaningful progress, and I just got completely stuck. I ended up, because I was working so hard and throwing myself into my job, I ignored some quite major health signs. And it was November 2008. I ended up being blue light run in an ambulance to hospital, ended up being really quite seriously ill, having an emergency operation.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
What was it?
They never actually formally diagnosed it. I believe that it was pelvic inflammatory disease as a result of a miscarriage that hadn't kind of cleared through properly, that then developed into sepsis. So I was in hospital for 2 weeks.
Wow. Sounds like it was so serious.
Yeah, it sounds so dramatic when I sort of say it. I have sort of spoken about it quite a lot, and like it doesn't feel like it's real. It's really bizarre. And then I this is how bad a state I was in terms of burnout and sort of self deprecating, I suppose. I remember them telling me, like, I asked them how quickly I could get back to work, because I was really stressed out about how much time I was missing, and they told me that I didn't seem to understand that I was going to be signed off for 3 months. 3 months was the convalescing after the operation that I'd had. And I just burst into tears because I thought I was going to lose my job. And I was like, oh, reality check here. Okay, like, hello, you've nearly died, yet you're worrying about losing your job. Like, the balance was not there. And it's almost
did you have a boss that was kind of like super driven as well, and like was constantly giving you more work, and you were just like receiving and not saying, hey, let's hire somebody else?
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly where I was. And it was almost like the universe stepped in and goes, okay, enough is enough now. You need, like, there was no other option. I had to stop. And that was a huge catalyst for kind of some reflection, looking at balance, and kind of just
I guess 3 months at home, you get, like, at some point you're feeling probably good enough to move around, and definitely
well, do you know what, it was really weird. I think one of the things that I was most worried about, and I do recognize this in myself, is I was so afraid that I'd be bored. It's like, if I stand still for too long, then and I'm with myself, it's like I'm afraid of what I might think of, or what might come up. Or it was
so interesting. I was the same way, a workaholic, and I prided myself that I couldn't sit down. Oh yeah, I'm a go-getter, I'm a type A, and I define myself that way. But there was something wrong with that. I couldn't sit still and be silent with myself.
Exactly. And the biggest lesson for me in that sort of period of time was actually, I quite liked just being. It gave me a chance to kind of get back in touch with my creative side. I picked up my paintbrushes again. I started just reflecting on what I actually really wanted, it gave me that time and space. I mean, how many times have we wondered or hoped or wished to ourselves, like, God, I would just wish the world would just stop for a minute just so I can take a breath and pause. I mean, actually, we all got it enforced on us last year. But that was my first kind of catalyst for making some change, I would say.
Now, were you married at the time or were you single?
I was married, yeah.
Okay.
My long-suffering husband, bless his heart. We've been together for 22 years now. So
now, did you have trouble conceiving? Because you said you have 3 boys, 11, 7, and 4, and you had a miscarriage.
Yeah. So I've actually had 3 miscarriages and I have 3 boys. So that was definitely, we had 2 miscarriages before we had my eldest son. And he's very much my angel baby. And he was very gratefully received. He kind of crashed into the world in emergency kind of dramatic fashion, and he's been kind of doing the same ever since. But he was very much that kind of, he gave me something, or he taught me so many lessons, and he still is on many levels, but he taught me that actually I needed something outside of work. He kind of forced me into finding a healthier balance. So going back from maternity leave with him, and I managed 6 weeks before I handed my notice in.
So let's go back. So you were in the hospital, you had 3 months convalescing, you got back into your little creative side, then you went back to the same job and continued to kind of be in that place. Okay. Yeah. But the thoughts are thinking, right?
The thoughts were thinking. And at the time I felt like I didn't have a way out. I didn't know what else I could do. I didn't feel like I had transferable skills. I mean, in your kind of mid-20s, like, I didn't really feel like I knew enough or anything, and I really lacked self-confidence. That was the problem in the job that I was in, because of that workaholic overgiving and not kind of making any progress. It really eroded my self-confidence and my self-esteem. I didn't believe that I could be any good at anything else.
Yeah, I think, and I'd love to know your perspective on this, but I think, and you said before we hit record that, oh, I don't have a sudden transformation, because a lot of times people think, you had a sudden emergency, but it's so often that, and I had a very long kind of before when I started to think about, I wasn't happy, I wasn't fulfilled. And it took me 13 years kind of to get to where I really was exactly where I was meant to be. And so, but that doesn't mean it doesn't percolate, that it doesn't like, you're now your eyes are a little open. And so I think you start to receive signs at that point. So do you think that is true for you?
Yeah, exactly that. I started taking more notice of what I guess energized me a little bit more, and kind of looking, like you say, my eyes were open. I started looking for clues, like maybe somebody would say something. So again, going back to sort of maternity leave, that gave me another 9 months to kind of really think about, okay.
So you got pregnant soon after that?
I did, yeah. So we had Ben in 2010. So not long after, really, in the grand scheme of things. And I met, during that time, you kind of meet other mums in the same position. We had like our little, what we have in the UK here is the NCT. We had my little NCT group, which is just basically a mum and baby group that they kind of put together, where you all have similar due dates. And out of a group of 8 of us, 3 of them were teachers. And teaching had been something that I had considered doing like years and years before, but I never felt that I never wanted to do teaching straight from university, because I remembered some of my best teachers, my favorite teachers, were the ones that had a bit more life experience, and that they could tell me like real life stories about their career or their past, that they kind of made teaching come alive. And I never really felt that going straight out of university, it's like, how can I teach anybody anything? Because I don't really know anything myself. So I very much wanted some life experience behind me. So by the time I kind of had Ben, I was sort of 31, just turned 31. And I thought, do you know what? I've had a career of almost 10 years now. I feel like I've got something I can give back. And actually, in my job in the fashion industry, I was always the one that got given the interns. I was always the one that got given the newbies to kind of teach the ropes, because I was so patient and I was like quite calm. And I was like, actually, maybe other people do see that in me. And maybe that's one of my kind of next clues. It's like following breadcrumbs, isn't it? You just kind of, people make sort of little suggestions, or I think quite often we become so blinkered in our own like world, you can't see the wood for the trees, and it's other people that see it for you. And if you're not aware enough or awake enough or looking for it, then you don't necessarily notice it straight away.
Yeah, that's so true. Yeah. And I think sometimes too, as long as we keep going where it feels good, yeah, they're breadcrumbs, but Tony Robbins uses that. I don't know if you know that, but he
Yeah,
says we step over them. But yeah, we first have to notice them. And then a lot of people don't notice them. And then they do the things that don't make them feel good. They makes them feel bad. It makes them feel
yeah,
crappy. Like my last job was horrible. I hated it. And my husband said, "Oh, anybody would have loved that job. Anybody would have loved to make that money." And I'm like, it's not about the money. So yeah. And I think just, yeah, follow the, what feels good, and be aware is
and
what you're
that's the
saying.
thing. I think in that old job that I had, to the outside world, so just picking up on what you said about your husband, to the outside world, to all my friends, I had this amazing glamorous job. I was traveling around the world. I had great salary. I had all the perks, staff discounts. I had all the latest fashions. I was, there were celebrities in the office, and we'd get wined and dined and taken out for dinner. Like, to everybody else, it was amazing. It just wasn't right for me. And
Yeah. So what
that,
were the signs that it wasn't right for you? Like, other than the health crisis, were there other signs? Because for me, I was like, I would dread work, like starting
yeah,
midday Sunday. I would be
yeah,
like, I'd get depressed. I'd be like,
yeah.
oh.
Sunday nights, I would spend, and this is no word of a lie, I'd start crying because I just didn't want Monday morning to come. That is not a good place to be in. And like, I would stay up really stupidly late, like early hours of the morning late, because in some kind of psychological way I was delaying getting up the next day, which is just, when I think about it, is completely insane, but that's exactly what I was doing. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So human design. So
Yeah.
how did you stumble upon human design?
So, as we've already sort of mentioned, a very non-linear journey to here. I did requalify as a teacher back in 2011. Again, the universe stepped in. I quit my job with nothing to go to, I wrote about 40 letters and went to various different schools, and a school wrote back and said, actually, you've got exactly the skill set that we want. Would you be interested in coming in for an interview? So that all felt very easy. And I was like, okay, that's fine. So I was teaching for 5 years. And then I joined a group coaching program because I decided while I was teaching that I actually really, really wanted to run my own business, but I didn't know what. I didn't know what I could do. But part of my teaching journey, part of my teacher training, was that we got allocated a coach. And that was my first introduction into coaching and how transformative it was. I'd never been in an environment before that was so supportive and actually valued what I thought and what I was bringing to the table. And that's obviously the beauty of coaching, is that actually it's more about you and focusing more on you and what you want. So that kind of started some cogs turning again.
I was the same way too. So for anybody who's listening and maybe in this place where they're hating their Sundays because of Monday, I didn't know. All I knew is that the coach that had been listening to his podcast, and I wanted more of him, and he had a program, and I'm not sure if that's the same one you're talking about, because I know we're in some of the same circles, But yeah, and so I joined just with the desire to learn and to and I figured that through the process I would figure it out. But I
Yeah.
knew that I wouldn't get anywhere or make any progress if I didn't take action that was towards changing my life.
Yeah. It's a different coach, I think, because actually the coach that I was with was she was a business coach.
Okay.
And here in the UK, I mean, she's changed again now, but so we're talking how long ago now? It would be nearly 4 years ago. I joined this group coaching program, and part of my thing was that we were living in London at the time. We actually totally lived in London for about 17 years, I think 17 or 18 years. And we'd had a couple of properties and on the property ladder, and we'd bought a house with a purpose of wanting to do it up and kind of sell it, move out of London. That was always the ultimate purpose. We bought the house in 2011. And we took a really long time to do it up. But it was always about, and again, it was about my eldest son, and we'd had another son by then as well, though our 7-year-old. And it was all about kind of creating a better life for them. Again, focus on them, I suppose, kind of gave us more of a purpose to wanting to maneuver our life into like the countryside. But I just didn't know how. My career was very London centric. I just didn't know how I could maneuver it outside. So, and still kind of have the sort of, I don't want to say, yeah, still kind of be able to make money, earn money, because obviously when you move out of the cities, it's the same everywhere around the world. Like the kind of opportunities are fewer, I suppose.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what
unless you want to commute.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, commuting here, you have tried public transport in the UK? It's not great.
I drove
Not
45 miles from my house to, it was 45 miles. So I drove basically 90 minutes a day to, an hour and a half to my job in DC.
yeah.
So that was crazy, but yeah. And that was before I really knew anything about podcasts. I don't even think podcasts were the thing back then.
This is the thing. Like, and this group coaching program kind of opened my eyes up to this whole kind of online business world that, I could actually do what I wanted to do, but I could do it virtually. How I kind of came to human design was and this is this business coach that I think you're talking about now. I joined his program last year, 2020, another kind of pivotal year where things were changing and I needed to up my game, and I kind of went full in and invested in this business program, and I didn't quite get out what I thought I was going to get, but it was part of the journey, and I got so much out of it, but it wasn't what I expected. And this, I guess, is the beauty of coaching, it being open, not having a fixed idea of what you're going to achieve and what you're going to get out of it. And the affiliate that I signed up with, part of her bonus was to get this introduction to human design, and I was suckered in straight away. I was smitten completely. I all of a sudden, having been through my own personal development journey for the previous sort of 12 years, all of a sudden all of these missing pieces just kind of started slotting into place, and I was like, oh, that makes sense. So off the back of that, I ran my own chart, and I was just frantically Googling and reading everything I possibly could. And I was so in it and it's so funny because
so you kind of felt like validated at some point because your human design type really resonated with you.
Yeah.
And it's like, so that's the reason I do these things. That's the reason why I have these personality traits or whatever. So can you describe what human design is and what the types are, just high level?
So the human design is basically the science of differentiation. For anybody who loves the personality test, obviously they kind of very much focus on putting you into boxes. Human design is literally everybody is different. Yes, there are the overarching 5 types, that's very kind of top level, but it goes down deep and it goes down to an individual level, and it's very much focused on the fact that you aren't your chart. Just because I can read your chart and I can tell you bits in it doesn't mean that that is exactly who you are. It just shares with you your potential, and it may explain things. For me, it explained how I had got into that burnout situation, why certain things and why I responded in certain ways. It also explained to me, I guess, kind of gave me permission for my kind of very interesting, unique learning on the job style about me, because I am a line 3 profile, which means I'm an experimenter. I learn by doing, and I need to try all of the things. So whereas I used to believe that being a jack of all trades, master of none was very much a negative thing, I actually now realize that it's part of my learning process. I am meant to learn through experience in life. That is just who I am, and just giving myself permission to do that has been a massive game changer.
And isn't that interesting how you had this like instinct back when you were picking what you wanted to do?
Yeah.
And you went with fashion and textile design versus teaching because you didn't think you had enough experience.
Yes, exactly.
That's crazy.
And that's when I do read people's charts, that's one of the things that most people say. They're like, oh, they've had moments where they have been on the right path, and they can now identify where they've kind of strayed off and how it made them feel. And then as soon as they come back onto the right path, they're like, oh, this actually feels right now. And all of those things, like when I said about the teaching, funnily enough, part of my thing is that I love to learn and share my knowledge. So teaching was absolutely the right thing, and I still do elements of teaching, not in a school setting, but in an online setting. And actually I'm teaching things that I really love now, which does change things, and it changes how I show up. And there are 5, you did sort of allude to it already, there are 5 human design types, and you've got the manifestor, who is in quantum human design is known as the initiator. So they're the ones that kind of have all of the ideas. They're quite impactful. They feel quite energetic to the rest of us, but they only make up about 9% of the population. So I was brought up believing I should make things happen, go out and make it happen. But actually, my type is a generator type. I'm not meant to initiate things, and I'm not meant to make things happen. And when I do try to push and try to hustle to make things happen, that's when I get into burnout and overworking, overgiving. So I could then see how I had got myself into that position, because I'd tried so hard to make this one thing happen, but it wasn't meant to be. So that explained that part. So as a generator, generators make up the biggest portion of the world's population, so around 35-36%. And we're creative. We are here to do, make and build. We are here to respond to the clues that the universe give us. It's kind of like a dance with the universe, it is the best way I can describe it. So, but it's looking for external things to respond to. So I might have an idea about something that I may think is a good idea, but I'm not meant to respond to my own stuff. I'm meant to look for the clues to see whether the evidence is there that, oh, okay, yeah, I think I've got enough people now asking me to do something. That is the clues. Where I was looking for clues, like all of a sudden these teachers came into my universe, into my immediate, what do you call it?
The mommy circle.
Yeah.
Mommy circle. Yeah.
And I didn't have any teacher friends before that. So it was like, okay, there's 2 people here now. And then somebody else said, oh, have you thought about teaching? This is another friend who'd said, when I was thinking about career options, she said, oh, I think you'd be an amazing teacher. And I was like, oh, okay, so that's several people now that have suggested teaching. Maybe this is something, this is the breadcrumb that I need to then respond to. Now, I had applied to various different jobs in the past and not got any responses, yet there was no job for the teaching. I literally just wrote to some schools and I had
Made
a
it
job
happen.
within a couple of weeks. It just happened.
Yeah. You did the doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did the responding, the universe kind of, it just kind of felt easy. So that's the generator type. You've then got the manifesting generator, who is like a hybrid of the manifestor and the generator. So they make up around 30%, but again, 34, 35% of the population. Now, they are highly energetic beings. And it's quite funny because when I teach about human design, everybody's always really jealous, including myself a little bit, of the manifesting generators. They seem to be the one that most people would love to be. They're almost a bit disappointed if they're not, because manifesting generators have that initiating action. They can have the ideas and respond to them. However, they are still meant to wait for the right things to respond to, because they need to get a taste of the action. They have an extra step in their strategy. So a kind of simple way of explaining this, okay, my middle son is a manifesting generator, and I might say to him, would you like some breakfast? And he'll say, oh yeah, I'll have cereal. I'll make the cereal, I'll put it in front of him, and he'll go, oh no, I don't want that, I want toast. And you're like, but I've just made the cereal. That's classic money gen, because they've had an idea, they think they want to do something, then it's put in front of them, or they try it out and they think, oh no, actually I've changed my mind, I don't want to do that, I want to do that instead. They need to try things, they need to get a taste of the action before they fully commit into their final decision.
That's so interesting. I'm sure this helps with parenting.
Yes, massively.
Yeah. And other relationships. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, that's 3.
So. Yeah. Then you've got the projector, and my youngest son is a projector. Now, they are classed as non-energetic beings. The first 3 are quite highly energetic. Projectors may appear to others as being, or can appear, if they're being true projectors, they can appear or can be mistaken for being lazy. They're not. It's just that they don't have sustainable levels of energy. They can't move as consistently and over long periods of time the same way that generators and manifesting generators can. What they do is they ride other people's energy, but when those people drop away, they kind of flop. So if, for example, again, my youngest son, his 2 brothers, he's got a generator brother and a manifesting generator brother. So when they're out in the garden or whatever, they'll be playing, they'll be going completely like crazy, and you think they're all really energetic. As soon as my older 2 will go inside, my youngest may sit on this chair, and like this afternoon, they've left the room and he completely flops. He needs a nap just to kind of recover and rest, to kind of let that energy sort of go. So think
about the poor projectors whose parents have said their whole life, you're just a lazy bum.
Yeah.
And then they live and grow up with this label and this identity.
This feeling that they're not good enough, that they're not, they're lazy, they don't do the right thing. And interestingly, projectors are kind of they are unbelievably wise. They are meant to be our guides. They have an innate ability to be able to direct the more energetic types. And there's some really famous projectors, world leaders. In fact, Barack Obama is quite a famous projector. So it doesn't mean that just because you're a non-energetic type doesn't mean that you can't have a massive impact. It just means that you'll have smaller bursts of impact, and you'll be directing. Your job is to kind of be at the helm and have all the energetic types doing the running around.
And that just says to me, a leader who needs to rely on the team.
Absolutely.
And finding the right, personalities, skill set, etc. That makes perfect sense. Okay, number 5.
Number 5 is also known as the kind of the unicorn of human design. They're the reflectors. They make up a really small portion of the world's population, so only 1%. And
what was the projector percentage?
20, I think it's 21%.
Okay. So what do these unicorns do?
They are.
Does everybody want to be a unicorn?
Well, do you know what? I have yet to come across a reflector in person. So I've read a couple of charts, but not actually met them in person. And I've listened to lots of interviews and podcast interviews with reflectors because they're so rare. I think it's really important that we learn what, for me in particular, and what I do, I need to learn about them. Now, they are also known as the calibrator. They are there to kind of reflect how we are doing as a society, basically. They give us a good indicator of how we are doing, because they act as a mirror for the rest of us, which is why they're called reflectors. So in order for a reflector to be happy, like truly happy, they need to be surrounded by people, like a good community. Community is really important to them, and they need to be in the right place with the right people around them, because they are so open through their chart. They have the ability to see our true full potential, and when we don't meet that, they can feel really disappointed. It can feel quite devastating to them. So it's so super important, especially as a parent, in fact, to make sure that you are honoring them, making sure that they are aware of their own energy. And the other thing about reflectors, because they're so open, they can find themselves, if they aren't so sure of themselves, then they can find themselves taking on other people's stuff. They can almost
like an empath type of
person. Massively empathic. And what they do is they kind of absorb all the energy of the collective and they kind of amplify it out. So they need lots of alone time as well to kind of recenter, reground themselves. But it
almost seems like, when I think of that, I think of like Mother Teresa and Eckhart Tolle and people who are pretty spiritual and also what I consider old souls. And, I know it probably can be anybody, but Maya Angelou, I think of those people that just have this kind of real depth and understanding. I don't know who they are. What are some famous people who are? Do you know?
I should have written some down.
Oh, that's okay. We don't have to worry about it. We can, maybe for the show notes, we can add some.
Send
me some.
That'd I can pin some over. I've got some written down somewhere.
So, and one thing that I wanted to say, which, because a lot of people might wonder, well, how do I know what I am? And what I know and learned is that, and a lot of personality tests are, answers. I mean, you just like go through questions and you answer, and the results can depend on the context of your life happening at the time. Absolutely. Which I learned from Alex Paulos, who's a personality expert. And so, but human design is based on your birthday.
It is,
and time. And so I don't know when I was born. My mother said, "Oh, in the morning." So I have to figure that out, I guess. I guess you can use a pendulum, and she said sometime around 9. So
I've used a pendulum because I've got a couple of clients whose mothers weren't around anymore, so they weren't able to actually ask either. So we've used a pendulum, and the client that I've got in particular mind, I then took several different times of the same day just to check against what came out with the pendulum versus like midday, in the afternoon and stuff like that. And actually not an awful lot changed in her chart, so I could kind of calibrate it based on that.
But then if you do that with somebody and then you tell them what they are, I'm sure there's also signs that are like you, we're like, oh yeah, the dots are now connected. So I'm sure it kind of like would resonate with somebody.
It does. And the thing is, the overarching type doesn't really change from day to day. Not that it's happened with me. What happens is it's the finer details, the kind of your gates, your channels, that might change, and some of the hexagram lines within the gates will change as well, because there's
that's right.
So much detail.
Because you said you were an experimenter, and that wasn't one of the 5, so I imagine that's like one of the deeper levels that you So interesting. All right. So let's like wrap it up because this has been an amazing conversation and we ended on a great note with the different 5 types. So I definitely want to get my chart read. I'm very excited about this. So tell me, yeah, but before we close, what has human design, like what was the biggest aha? What, like how, like knowing what you know now and thinking about your life without human design,
Yeah.
what has it done for your life?
Honestly, it has improved my family relationships. And I'm not just talking about my parenting with my kid, but with my husband. Like he, in the last year, has completely changed his career. So we've helped, it's been a catalyst for that, which has improved our bigger life.
Oh, so he used his human design to do that?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah. And again, it was kind of focusing on the things that, looking at his strengths, he'd been in a career for 15 years. So he kind of burnt that, and again, has just kind of really settled in. And he started his new job in August and has gone from strength to strength. So that's been massive. It's also helped me understand how I was parented, because just understanding my parents, it's allowed me to heal a lot of the stuff, because we all carry our wounds and trauma and stuff from how we were brought up. And we try not to project that stuff onto our own kids, but it's allowed me to heal a lot of stuff there. And actually, I had this amazing moment a few weeks ago. I was down visiting my parents, who don't live together anymore, but I spent a whole weekend with my mum and then like evenings with my dad. And I can honestly say it's probably the first time where they have actually seen me for being me. And they've actually said that as well. They feel like it's probably one of the few things they still agree on. It's to be with them, to really be who I am meant to be, and has kind of shifted the whole dynamic of our relationship. Like, we're no longer parent and daughter, we're now kind of adults on a different level. And it's very interesting kind of how much more empowered I feel. That would be the biggest shift, is for me, is like I know who I am, and I think I always did, but now I really know who I am, and I'm not afraid to be that person.
Yeah, that's great. I love it. Yeah, that child, mother, father dynamic that sometimes is like till they die. I mean,
Yeah.
it's very hard to get on an adult to adult level. That's really great. So, last question, what do you think exemplifies, or how do you exemplify living a not your average life?
Living my own life unapologetically, being me, is how I would say not living my average life.
Yeah, because you know what that means? That means that you're a unique being
Yeah.
and not blending with the crowd.
No.
I love that. That is so good. Yes, because people think that, oh, I have to do this major thing to like not be average. No, you just need to be you because there's nobody like you.
Exactly. And that's one of the reasons I love Carrie Parker, is that she always says that you are one in a lifetime cosmic being, like a cosmic event. There is no one else like you on this planet, and there never will be again.
Yeah. And those of us who didn't really have a hard time getting pregnant, and, actually the first one was a little bit of an accident, for people like you who realize how difficult it is, like, I think it's so much more believable for those people that have like, yeah, it is a miracle
It is.
when it's hard to come by. Yeah.
It is. But I genuinely believe that everything happens for a reason, and there was a
Mhm.
lesson in absolutely everything. And each child that we've been fortunate enough to have, bring with them a different lesson.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's funny. My first daughter, she was like, we were like super open here. So we went away for Thanksgiving break and we forgot the condoms. So, and we were like, and it was my in-laws pull-out sofa. That was the day, we were young, we were, just married, and it was like, we'll get them tomorrow. And I was, it's a safe time, right? Gosh, glad that, it happened when it happened, because there was other times I thought it was a safe time that I wouldn't have been ready to get pregnant. So I was actually, we had never really talked about like, how many kids do you want? And when I found out though I was pregnant, I was super excited, and he was too. He was a little shell shocked, but yeah, so it worked out amazingly. So, but there's a little funny story there. She was meant to be here. She's been,
absolutely.
Both of them are special kids, just like yours are. So, but I don't know what their human design is. We'll have to find that out. Thanks so much.
Fill in a lot of gaps.
Yeah. So interesting. Other personality type tests have like really helped me. So anything that you can find out and know more about yourself,
absolutely,
that explains stuff is highly valuable in not only understanding you and where you're supposed to go in your journey, but understanding other people. And, because everybody we think somebody should act like us. Like, what's wrong with you? Why aren't you like acting like, I wouldn't act like that? Why are you acting like that?
Yeah.
And then once we understand, it's like, oh yes, bless you. That's just you. It's so much easier, isn't it?
It is. And definitely that's been part of my parenting journey as well. Just understanding like how 3 boys who are born to the same parents can be so unbelievably different, but seeing their charts like literally in black and white, and you're like, oh, okay. Yeah. Now it makes sense.
Yeah. And then you're not mad at them for wanting some toast instead of Cheerios.
Really.
All right, Sarah, thank you so much for being here. It was wonderful to get to know you a little bit better and learn more about human design.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for tuning into the Not Your Average Lives podcast. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe on iTunes if you have an Apple device. You can find free resources and learn what else I have going on at the moment that might interest you on my website at notyouraveragegrandma.com. You can also find me on Instagram or Facebook at Not Your Average Grandma. If you liked this episode, it would make my heart so happy if you could leave me a 5-star rating. You can also add a review to let me know what you like about this podcast, which will help spread the word about it to others who need a little midlife inspiration. As always, be you, listen to your inner voice, and focus on reigniting that lost spark so you can start living your own, not your average life.